Hey everybody, welcome back to another Meaningful Monday live stream. Excuse me, sorry. Meaningful Monday live stream. Today we're talking about entrepreneurship and whether it's right for you or not. So first things first, I apologize if you can hear the ice cream truck in the background. Just really annoying, but it's been going for like an hour, so I don't know when it's gonna stop. Hopefully it stops soon. Anyway, I want to kick off actually by starting a little bit differently than normal. I want to start by talking about a book that I'm reading right now, which is actually phenomenal. It is this book right here, B 2.0 by Jim Collins. It's a recommendation by my good friend Sri Shesadri, who's another coach. He's based out of India, but he's in India right now. He's based out of wherever he is because he travels a lot, but he's a good dude. Recommended this book, and I've been reading it recently. It's actually awesome. It's phenomenal. It's actually very, very good for anyone looking to start a business or in a business right now. Just good information, really interesting stuff about mindset and how it actually goes and influences the work you're able to do. So for those of you who want to look into that, that's definitely something to check out. I'll post a link in the chat or in the description below after the fact. But happy to talk about that anytime. But if you have questions or comments specifically about entrepreneurship, about startups and running a business and that kind of thing, particularly in COVID, please feel free to throw them in the chat. Happy to address those as we get them. We had a few questions come in between now and last time we had last week. So I'm going to go ahead and address those in the meantime, but please do submit your questions. Let me know if you have specific questions about what I'm saying, those kind of things. And so Hannah, you want to throw the first question? What was the first question we had? All right. What's a good way to figure out who my target audience is? Awesome. Great question. The first thing is you want to identify a problem. It's not a solution. Identify a problem, right? You want to be able to articulate what that problem is, and then that's going to lead you into who has that problem, right? So you don't want to create a solution for a problem before you have a problem, right? Don't just create something and then be like, okay, what does this fit? Start with the problem, create the solution for that, and start with the problem you have, right? Or a challenge you're facing. Then that'll help you to articulate exactly who you're targeting and who would be a good target audience for you, right? Is it someone who's going to be a mom? Is it going to be someone who's going to be a full-time caregiver? Is it someone who's going to be a full-time employee, a manager, a director, those kind of things? Think about things from different perspectives, and then create what I like to call a client avatar, which is going to be basically your ideal client, right? And you want to give that avatar all the qualities of a client you would have, right? So that they have a job, they have a day-to-day, right? They have a life. What does that life look like? What does a day in the life of your client avatar look like, right? What kind of things goes through their head, right? So you want to be able to really flesh all that out, and that actually gives you insight into that person and who they are and how they function and what kind of things they're afraid of, what kind of things they're hopeful for, what do they want, right? Then you start tailoring your offer specifically for that person, for that target audience. You can also have more than one client avatar, aka more than one target audience. So don't just feel like you have to only have one. So start with just one, obviously, right? And then as you create that one, flesh that one out, you'll get additional ones to come in and say, okay, well, this actually also applies to this adjacent group of people over here. Let's create another avatar for them, and then another adjacent group, maybe, right? But it's a very, very important question, and I would say that's one of the first things you want to do. It's a way to validate your product or your service, because if you don't have an idea of who you're serving, you can't serve everyone, right? There's no such thing as, there are products that apply to everybody, right? But they're not targeted to everyone. There's a reason certain ads play during Super Bowl and certain ads play during certain shows and certain kinds of times of day. Those ads are targeted for a reason. So it's important to understand where those things come from and why those kinds of targeting are happening. So I hope that answers the question. Yep. What's the next one? How much money should I have saved before I decide to start a business? Good question. It's a very complicated answer, but this is definitely a case-by-case situation. So your level of tolerance with risk and that kind of thing. I would always say I would advise people, don't quit your day job until you feel comfortable doing so, and comfortable enough. And comfort can be an excuse for holding on to something that's not really healthy for you, or you're not really happy doing. So again, it depends on working with that person, with you or whoever you're talking to about the business you're trying to start, and whether it actually makes sense for you or not. But you want to have a healthy savings of some sort, or at least some kind of plan for mitigating your perceived financial losses in the short term, because there are very few businesses that are profitable right off the bat. And even if they are, there's going to be lulls. There's going to be times where you're not necessarily able to be as profitable as you want to be. And you also have to be able to allow for fluxes in the market, fluxes in feedback, and your ability to serve clients, and your ability to market stuff. So, you want to be able to plan that out. So I don't think there's necessarily a number. Everyone's number is going to be different. I would probably err on the side, if you're able to have this kind of money saved up, I would err inside of a year's worth of savings if you can. It's not a requirement, not a hard and fast at all. That number, like I said, is going to be different for everybody, depending on their level of risk tolerance and their actual expenses in life. But take the time to figure that out for yourself, right? Look at your monthly expenses, look at your yearly expenses, look at what you actually need to spend. And I mean necessities, right? And create different budgets for yourself and figure out what makes sense for you. But you have to be able to take that hard look and that honest look and assess your risk tolerance for yourself, because no one else can do that really for you. I mean, you can work with a coach to do it or with a consultant to do that. It's really something where you're able to make that decision for yourself. And those kind of folks are going to be helpful to help you to consider those kind of things. You don't want to do necessarily a quick and dirty type thing. You want to be relatively effective and hard and fast, like what you want to do. So, cool. I hope that answers the question as well. What things do I absolutely need in place to start a business? Good question. So, it depends, but generally speaking, I like to think of things in terms of, for those of you who are familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, I like to think of things in terms of the hierarchy of the entrepreneur's hierarchy of needs, right? On the bottom, you're gonna have your basic things like LLC incorporation, or incorporation in general, whether it's an LLC or sole proprietorship or whatever it looks like. But you want to have your basic incorporation, business insurance, bookkeeper, CPA, folks like that on your team already, right? You want to be able to create your team for you, that you have in place you can lean on if you need to, right? Business attorneys, that kind of thing. If you want to hire those kind of folks up front, it's good to at least have those connections in case you need them. The last thing you want to be able to be doing is scrambling to find someone and then having to just grab the first person you find when you need those folks later on. You want to at least have those people on your team so you can refer to them as you need to, get introduced, make connections. That's something I do a lot with my clients, is I act as that connector for folks, because a lot of times you don't have those connections that you need to start your business or to keep things going or to really, make sure that you have everything you need. So tapping into those connections and really making that team for yourself. So that's going to be the base level. The next level up is going to be actually now workflows, right? What do your processes look like? What are going to be the ways you serve your clients? Who are your clients? That goes back to the client avatar thing, right? That's level 2. It's not even level 0, because you want to get those things in place. It could be level 0 depending on how far along you are. But I would say that's level 2. Just once you have those things in place, then you can have your offerings and figure out who your clients are and that kind of thing. And then once you get to that point, then you can start looking at vision and strategy down the line, right? In terms of being able to get to the quote unquote self-actualization part of the hierarchy. That's when you want to start looking at a coach or folks like that, mentors, and they can help you from the beginning. But if you're not able to get that initial baseline foundation done, it's not going to help you to have those kind of folks at the top, right? You want to get that stuff done first and get those things in place so that you have everything you need to operate. All your liabilities, all your risks are mitigated as much as possible. You can't ever manage and mitigate all risks, but you can do what you can to try to mitigate them up front. So that's what I would say about that. And I think that there's value. It's a ton of value in networking and making those connections and just meeting a bunch of different people from different walks of life and different companies, different firms, and understanding who you gel with, right? Because those are the people who you gel with and who's capable at what they're doing. Two just different but important things, because you want to be able to work with people you can work with healthily and not go crazy and not want to kill the other person, or vice versa. At the same time, they have to be competent, right? You don't want to just work with someone just because they're your friend, right? That's great if they're your friend, but just because they're your friend doesn't mean that they're good at what they do. You want to be able to have the best people to work with and the best people who can get the work done, because at the end of the day, that friendship's not going to save you in court, or not going to save you from poor clients or poor decisions in a business. So make sure you temper those things effectively. I don't have a viable business idea. This is a good question. It's a question a lot of people deal with a lot of times. It's the short and quick answer is really the market will tell you, right? It's a matter of, if you have like I said earlier, if you have a problem that you can create a solution for, then you can put something out there and see if others have the same have the same need, right? If they need the same solution that you do, that you created for yourself, then test it with, you can do a market testing and that kind of thing and see what makes sense in terms of that, whether it's a service or a product doesn't really matter in terms of the market testing part of things. The difficulty comes with inventory if you have products, right? Because you have to have a place to store them. Now, the different nuances we can talk about it in terms of whether you're doing like Amazon or things like that, drop shipping or whatever that looks like. But the basic idea is you want to market test it as much as possible. You want to be able to identify who your target audience is. Again, that goes back into the earlier question, which is the client avatar. But identify your target audience, who needs those services or products, and then reach out to those folks. Make connections in those groups. One really popular way to do it nowadays is to create a Facebook group, a closed Facebook group, or just a membership group on Facebook that you can invite people to who you know are in that demographic, and kind of test the waters a little bit, have conversations with them, get involved in those, treat them as basically you're doing market testing that's free. That's still serving them because you're answering questions and being a resource for them. At the same time, they're also being a resource for you, right? Because you're answering questions, you're asking them questions at the same time and getting their feedback on things you're offering or ideas you might have, there's a couple really effective ways to do that. And you can just do, it takes a bit of research, honestly, and a bit of effort in terms of being able to accept feedback. I mean, the last thing you want to do though is get committed to an idea to the point where you're going to make it work, try to make it work no matter what, right? That's a great story if it works out. But if you're trying to force fit a solution into a problem that doesn't exist, you're going to waste a lot of money, a lot of time, and spin your wheels, right? You may also burn some bridges along the way. The other thing is, if you're going to try to force this thing to work, and not listen to the users, not listen to the feedback, and just ignore the feedback, you're also probably going to have the same problem. Just to give you an example, I did a project this is years ago when I was in IT. We were creating a web portal for who we thought were, this one target audience. Turns out that this other target audience really, really liked it and was more effective for them, more useful for them, right? And we had never thought of that audience as an audience for our platform. Meanwhile, the other side of things were they just weren't using it. The people we targeted, the people we thought we wanted to use it with. Unfortunately, the people above were so committed to this group, to Group A. I'll call them a Group A. And the reason I'm being coy about this is because there's a government contract and I don't want to disclose anything. But Group A was who we targeted this platform for, right? And the people on the leadership of this project, unfortunately, they were insisting that we kept going after Group A, only focus on Group A. And we're all saying Group B they're the ones using this. They're the ones who are actually really enjoying this and giving us feedback, valuable feedback at that. But they were committed to Group A. They're like, let's keep adding on stuff, add on more, add this, add that, add this. And yeah, Group A will use it if we add 5 more features. When we asked them where they got that feedback from or where they got that information from, they didn't have an answer. So that's ended up spending $2 million over what they planned, right? So, and that's a drop in the bucket for government contracts for those of you who don't know that. But for smaller contracts, like some of these people, that $2 million is a lot of money. So think about that. It's easy to waste a lot of money if you get overcommitted to something that's not actually valuable. So I hope that answers the question. Hey, Kendra. All right. Thanks for tuning in. Let's see what we got. Thanks for the topic. What are some personality traits and characteristics you would say are essential for an entrepreneur? Great question. I did a presentation on this earlier. She wasn't there for that. So that was not a planned plug, I promise. But much appreciated anyway. So there are 3 things that I went over today earlier about what the essential things are for an entrepreneur to have. Number 1 is a growth mindset, right? So there's a fixed mindset and there's a growth mindset. The fixed mindset is just statements and definitions. I am X, right? It's putting yourself into a box that's relatively arbitrary and that's just what you are, right? The idea is like, I am this thing and that's all I am. And you limit yourself to that thing. And over time, that mental reinforcement of limiting yourself to that thing doesn't allow you to grow or be better than that thing, right? Or outgrow that box. Think about it like a snail that never outgrows that shell, right? They have to change shells because they outgrow it. You're not letting yourself outgrow it because you now are saying you are that shell, right? So that's one thing that you want to be able to overcome by focusing on the growth mindset, which is that we're always growing, we're always learning, we're always adapting, right? As humans, that's what we do. We adapt and survive. So when you accept that and start looking at things as opportunities, again, going back to the failure, to the feedback thing, I say feedback instead of failure because there's no real failure unless you just give up at that point. That's when it becomes a failure. If you look at things as feedback, as this is a way to do something, this is not a way to do something, that can be really, really powerful and empowering for you as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, is looking at things from a growth mindset. Like, I'm going to keep building and growing, and this is a way not to do it. I'm going to keep trying and to do this, to make it work. So that's one thing, is the growth mindset. The other one is getting out of scarcity mindset and into abundance mindset. And this also is another, mindset shift that happens. Scarcity is essentially just fear, right? I'm afraid of not having enough. I'm afraid of something, right? Something is holding me back because of fear, right? I'm afraid there's not enough work to go around. There's not enough clients. There's people who just appear really greedy, like they're not willing to refer people out. They're not willing to split their work up or really kind of find ways to work with other people. Those are people who are operating out of fear. They're not bad people. They're just not effective at making connections. They're not effective at seeing the bigger picture and the possibilities for collaboration or for people growing together. So that's operating out of a scarcity mindset. And on the flip side, you have an abundance mindset. There's a great book called The Go-Giver. Anyone who has not read that yet, please go out and check it out. I'll also put a link in the description about that later. But The Go-Giver is a story, but it's a parable almost. Like, it illustrates a lot of things, a lot of ideas about being an entrepreneur and being successful, about being a good business person in general, right? And the idea is that by giving more, you'll get back in return. And this is a very energetic concept in the universe about, putting out positive energy and getting positive energy back. You may not get it from the same person necessarily, but what goes around comes around in the best way. So the idea is, you may get a client, and let's say for example, me, right? I'm a business coach. I'm a leadership coach. I'm not really a career coach. I'll do it if it comes up, but I mean, it's not something that lights me up. I don't, it is what it is at that point. I'm not like wedded to career coaching. But if I was operating on a scarcity mindset, I'd be like, I have to take every client I can get, right? No matter what, I have to take every possible client. I'll do that. Yeah, I'll do that too. Doesn't matter if I actually can do that work or not, or if I like doing that work or not, I'll take it, right? Because I need that money in my mind. But that ends up getting me super tired, right? It ends up destroying my energy because it doesn't really light me up. It's not fun for me. I don't really enjoy doing it. And then what happens? My client doesn't necessarily get the best service either. And then they're not going to necessarily refer me. So the idea is to focus on what you enjoy doing, right? What I could do with that career coaching client, I happen to know a career coach. I can just refer them to that career coach. So that's their specialty, right? Yes. Did I pass up some money from a client? Absolutely. But I also passed that client on to somebody else, so I know they're getting good service, because I trust that person. I wouldn't just give it to some random person, right? I would pass it on to someone I trust, which helps with having a good network. On top of that, that person is not going to think like, oh, wait, Drew passed me that client at one time. So now if someone comes up who's a leadership client or a business coaching client, I'll probably pass them to Drew, because I don't specialize in that. I do career coaching, right? So it's a typical type thing, but you don't do it just for reciprocity. You do it because it's the right thing to do, because it's also best for you at the same time. It's best for your mental health. It's best for your energy. And so that idea of abundance, that there's enough to go around. There's enough money. There's enough work. There's enough happiness and positive energy to go around the world, essentially, right? That's the abundance mentality. And so what I put out there, I will get back. The third thing is something that I talked about today and coined it a little bit. It's called intention-oriented action, right? Now, there's two kinds of action. There's passive action, and then there's intention-oriented action. Passive action is an oxymoron. It sounds like one, but it's a real thing. Basically what it is just action that's uninspired. Action that you're doing out of either obligation or because you're just spinning your wheels, or it's like you're on autopilot. It doesn't really mean anything to you, right? It's action that you're just action, result, action, result, action, result. No matter what the results are, you're going to keep doing the same action, right? And then eventually you might bang your head against the wall, and to the point where it's like, okay, I'm getting the same result. Why am I getting the same result? Because you're doing the same action, right? Flip to intention-oriented action. And it's all about iteration, right? But you start with the intention first. Why are you doing this thing? What's the ultimate goal? Go back to that every single chance you get. And that's going to allow you to revisit the how you get there, right? The actual action. So you start with the intention, you go to the action, take that action, get feedback, not failure or success, but feedback. This did well, this didn't do so well. Now let's move back up again and say, okay, now let's examine it and see why it did well, why it didn't do well, how it actually did. Now let's try to tweak something. That's the iterative part, right? Tweak something and then go back to the intention. Is that tweak going to take away from the intention? No? Good. Let's keep going and try it again. Take the action again, right? And then it's a cycle, and it eventually will iterate to the point where you have the best workflows possible, the best products and services offered possible for your clients, for your potential clients. And you'll also be happier and have a better energy in general because you're able to continuously grow and continuously reinvest that time and energy into the business and into your clients. So the more you allow yourself the freedom to iterate, that's really what you want to be able to do. So it's those kind of things, and those are also give you the ability to persevere because things are not going to be always easy. The earlier question about how much is best to have saved, that's a question about perseverance, honestly, at its core, right? It's like, how much do I have to be ready to give up or be ready to risk to jump in and do this, right? Who knows? I mean, you may not see success, profit in 2-3 years as an entrepreneur, right? Meanwhile, you could also see it in the first 3 months or first month. Who knows? I mean, there's not really a hard and fast rule that a guaranteed return or anything like that, right? So you want to be able to prepare for the worst as much as you can. But the ultimate thing you'll need is going to be those 3 mindsets, those 2 mindsets and the intention-oriented action, so that you're able to keep building yourself and keep adapting as you need to. Because the story of entrepreneurship is a story of adaptation. It's really pivoting, figuring out what's what. The best entrepreneurs in the last year who didn't let the pandemic and frustration and fear get to them are the ones who could pivot and say, you know what, I don't have to deliver services in person. I can do them online. Or I don't have to have a restaurant open. I can create my food and whatever and have people pick it up or deliver it to them, right? Or I can start doing more kind of smaller catering events, or I can pivot to do a YouTube channel about how to cook in general. I mean, there's not one right way to do it. That's the ultimate thing about entrepreneurship, right? It's ultimately the resolve, not the knowledge. Knowledge is by itself is irrelevant, right? It's why you're doing what you're doing. If you can keep the why in mind, the how will work itself out. You'll find a way to make these things work if there's a why in place. And I don't mean you'll find a way to force fit your particular offering or service offering or product into the solution. What I mean is the why is going to be that problem you want to solve or the ultimate thing that you want to accomplish. You'll find a way to accomplish that may or may not look like your original idea. That's what entrepreneurship really comes down to, is having this why and then fulfilling that why with a product or service yourself. So that was a very long-winded answer to your relatively short question. I hope that helped, Kendra. Sorry, but I tend to get excited about these things and ramble on for a bit. So I hope that helped. But yeah, so any other questions or comments, anyone? Okay, here we go. COVID accepted entrepreneurship. I think it has and it hasn't, right? COVID has definitely affected entrepreneurship. I think on one side, it's caused a lot of people to lose their jobs, frankly, right? Which is, and sometimes can spark a lot of entrepreneurship, right? People they now are like, okay, you know what? Instead of trying to apply for another job, because there's so many or so few jobs out there, that we might as well just start our own thing. That could spark entrepreneurship. It also can also make it tough because you need to have that kind of, that you want to have that kind of security. You don't need to have it, but you want to have that kind of security, that kind of safety of in times like this where you kind of feel like you want to turtle up a little bit. The answer, I think, is somewhere in between, right? It's really about balancing your need for safety and security with the risk. It's mitigating that risk because there is some kind of risk, but no risk, no reward, right? Every time you take a risk, you have a possible idea, at least a calculated risk. You have a possibility of reward. And so I think it has affected entrepreneurship in some communities. Depending on your mindset, that's how you know if it affected you or not, or how it affected you. Some people with the growth mindset, with that idea of continuously growing and changing, those are the folks who are probably going to be like, you know what, I don't want to depend on a full-time job anymore. I want to do my own thing and start my own thing up, right? The folks with the fixed mindset, like, I am this thing. I am a project manager. I am a sales manager. I am an employee with X company, right? And they laid me off. That's my position. That's what I am. That's how I define myself. Again, it's a question of identity, right? However you choose to identify yourself, that's what you're going to be looking for. That's what you're going to see in the world, and that's how you're going to go out and either do what you want to do. Has it made it more difficult? I don't think it's made it more or less difficult. I think it's just it really depends on the mindset. It's something where it's changed the world we operate in, absolutely, but it has not. I don't think it's more or less difficult than it ever has been. I mean, that with technology, I think it's become easier to be an entrepreneur just because there's so many ways you can deliver services remotely now that there weren't 20, 30 years ago, right? So that in that sense, it's easier, but that wasn't because of COVID. That was just in general. I mean, we had that, everything we have right now, we had prior to COVID, just we just didn't really use it as much as we could have. So yeah, I hope that answers the question. What else do we have? Anything else? Any other questions that were submitted? Any other questions from the gallery, folks watching? I hope this is informative for folks and helpful. And if you have questions, I'm happy to chat more. But if not, then I think we're 25 minutes. I think we're going to go ahead and call it for tonight. But thank you guys so much for tuning in. Thanks, Kendra, for the question. I always appreciate it. And yeah, I guess I'll see you guys again on Thursday. Actually, I'm really excited about Thursday. My good friend Reem is coming out. Well, not coming out. She's going to be at home probably, but she's going to be on the show. We're talking about her work as a coach and a new, not new, it's new-ish, but it was a recent development that she created this thing called the BIPOC Coach Collective, which is a collection of coaches who are operating the minority and diversity, equity, inclusion space, and also just of BIPOC origins. So it's really, really cool. It's a fun group. And I'm excited to talk to her about it and have her explain more about that as we go forward. But yeah, folks, thanks again for tuning in. Please let me know if you have any questions additionally after this. I'm happy to chat with you guys one-on-one, or, on the next show we have this, I can answer more questions. But yeah, please like, subscribe, share, and yeah, talk to you guys soon.